Okay, Shavua Tov, everybody. We're going to get started. My name is Mark Rosenberg. I'm with Nefesh B'Nefesh. I'm the VP of Diaspora Partnerships. And this is not an ordinary evening for me here from Jerusalem. Many times over the past few weeks and few months, we've been giving typical webinars of straight out information, answering resources. And tonight is a very, very special collaboration. It is entitled Coming Home. It's a partnership this evening with the Shlomo Katz Project and Nefesh B'Nefesh. And I have the honor of introducing our good Rav Shlomo Katz here now. It is amazing, a privilege to live in Israel. And when you spend as long as time as I've been here, almost 19 years, you spend enough moments where you bump into people and you see them around at different concerts and slichot and different weddings. And this is really, really an honor to be able to introduce what has now become a world-renowned musician. In the summer of 2006, Shlomo received his rabbinic ordination from Rabbi Bravender and Rabbi Shlomo Riskin at Yeshivat HaMiftar. Has since released 7 albums and conducted hundreds of concerts and tours throughout the world. And what now is serving as the rabbi of Shirat David, the community of Efrat, and continues to tour, teach, and perform throughout the world and via video and Skype as we are doing now. Rav Shlomo lives in Efrat with his wife, Bina, and 4 daughters. And it is really, really an amazing privilege to be able to work together this evening. Without further ado.
Mark, thank you so very much. Chevra, thank you for being with us. Thank you to the whole team in Nefesh B'Nefesh for making this happen, not just this, but all the Avodat HaKodesh, all the holy work that you're busy doing, not just now, in Corona times, Yom V'Layla, day and night. Before I share a little bit from the heart and discuss what tonight's all about, I also want to thank my assistant, my dear friend, Shimon Detweiler, the executive director of our project, who's working very, very hard on all of this, and inviting you, before we start thinking with our minds, to start thinking a little bit with our hearts. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Leha Hashem Kohani לעבודתה ולהביא לשירה ולזמרה בהשם ישראל, בהשם ישראל, בהשם ישראל, לנבאים, בהשם ישראל, בהשם ישראל, בהשם ישראל, לנבאים. Return again, return again. Return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again. Return to the land of your soul. Okay, I can't hear you, but I'm sure I'll feel you. You gave me some harmony for this one. I'm going to be singing one more song for now. This is a brand new tune just put out a few weeks ago called Anatoly, written in a town, a Ukrainian town called Anatoly a number of years ago, and it's very close to my heart. ay, 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 oh, ay, 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 oh, ay, 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 Okay, shalom uvracha, everyone. I want to tell you a little bit about where we are right now, where I am, where I physically am right now. A number of years ago, we, like Mark mentioned before, we're privileged to have 4 precious, beautiful daughters who, thank God, look like their mommy. And one day when our oldest came back from kindergarten, she came home and she wanted to share with us a new song that she had learned in kindergarten. I'm sure you've noticed that when children learn a new song, they take it very, very seriously. And it could be the silliest song in the world, but they're not aware of it. So when they come home with the new song, you also got to take it really seriously, even if something's a little bit off with the song. And my wife and I were both so excited and happy to see that our daughter was singing a tune written by a very close friend of our family, Chaim David, the famous musician, a dear friend of ours, Chaim David Sarachik. It's a famous song. It's called 7 Shepherds. Avram Avinu, Ish Chesed, Yitzchak Avinu. You basically go down the list of the 7 shepherds, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Yosef, Moshe, Aaron, and David. And it speaks about each of them. Now, Tiferet was getting that's our oldest daughter's name, Tiferet. She was getting very, very into it. She was getting very into it. And when it came to the end, when it came to the time to the last person in the song is David Melech Yisrael, Malka Meshicham. Goes like this. David Melech Yisrael, Malka Meshicham. So Tiferet takes her finger and she starts pointing like this. David Melech Yisrael, Malka Meshicham. My wife and I did not understand why she's going a no-no sign when we're talking about when she talks about David HaMelech. But when a child learns a song and they want to show that they're very into it, you don't mess with them, you don't try to correct them. You just hope that maybe hopefully the next time when they sing the song, they'll sing it better. When did it ended up happening? The next day, my daughter comes home again and she sings it again, same movement. The third night, my daughter comes home from school and she sings it again. But this time I was like, I just need to understand. Why is it that whenever she gets to David Melech Yisrael, she keeps on going like this? She keeps on going like, no, no. So why am I saying this right now? And this is really just a bit of a taste of our privilege, Mamash. You can't see, but behind this wall over here, if you just keep on walking, approximately for 10, 12 minutes, you get to a very interesting place. What place is that? When my daughter was going David Melech Yisrael, she wasn't saying no, no. She said to us, no, Abba. And she moved us out of the way and she pointed from our living room towards Beit Lechem. David Melech Yisrael, Malka Meshicham. She was pointing where David HaMelech was born. That's how my daughter is learning about Am Yisrael. By being able to sit in a classroom and look out the window here in Efrat and see where David HaMelech is born, and in some buildings over here to actually see Yerushalayim, and to also know that about 15 minutes south from here, I'm in Hebron. I grew up in Los Angeles. It was beautiful. It was great. But I couldn't really point to anywhere on the streets of LA and point to and think about my Elta Zaidi. It's a different ballgame, but it's a privilege that absolutely never, ever gets old. At that moment that my daughter was pointing, while she was singing the song about David Melech Yisrael, it was shlemut. It was literally a moment that whenever I go back to it, that moment I'm transported right then and there. So my dear friends, I was davening today very strong. I was really davening strong over this wonderful program that us and our project are so honored to take part, to join in partnership with Nefesh B'Nefesh over here. I see there's so many people here joining us. It's so wonderful. It's so beautiful. And I really wanted to make sure that I'd be in the proper zone for such a beautiful and important event, because this is right now, mamash, hora'at shah. This is where we're at in the world. This is the time. This is the time to, I don't have to speak to anybody about the importance of this webinar because you're here. So that's already wonderful and beautiful. So where do we fit in this whole program? It kind of goes like this. In the second bracha in Birkat HaMazon, the second bracha, the first blessing in Grace After Meals was written by Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's not spoken in first tense, it's spoken in third person. Hazan et ha'olam kulo betuvo, you speak about God. Hu noten lechem l'chol basar. He is the one who gives bread to all human flesh. Ki le'olam chasto, his kindness. Uvetuvo, his greatness. Ba'avur shmo hagadol, for the sake of his name. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. And as high and as exalted and as important and as crucial as Moshe Rabbeinu's role was in Am Yisrael, when he speaks to us in benching, he's speaking about God. But the second blessing was written by Yehoshua. Our sages tell us it was written by Joshua. And let's just think for a second about the second blessing that we, anyone that's had bread today, I've said it today at least once. Ve'al hakol Hashem Elokeinu, anachnu modim lach. It's first person. You are our God, we are thanking you. U'mevarchim otach, and we're blessing you. Yitbarach shimcha b'fi kolcha. Your name should be blessed before any living creature. Tamid l'olam va'ed. Kakatuv ve'achalta ve'savata. You shall eat and you shall be satiated. You will be satisfied. The second blessing was written by Joshua because Joshua made it to Eretz Yisrael. From where we're coming, my chevra, and so many wonderful people here, is the desire to come and connect to Eretz Yisrael through the bracha of Yoshua, to have a personal, first-person relationship with Ribono Shel Olam, which really happens here. As much as we think we know God when we're homeless, when we're out of our proper homes, something happens here. Something transpires here. There's the word vesavata. Vesavata uverachtat Hashem Elokecha al haaretz hatova asher natan lach. We all want to be satiated. We don't just want to have a little bit of a hunger tended to. We want to be satiated. That's lisboa, savata. And we're looking for in all different types of shades and forms, and that's what's going on in the whole world, and even by the good chevra in the world, whatever that means. People are looking to feel fed, to feel full. Eretz Yisrael, for Am Yisrael, in the holy and proper way, is the key to visavatas, to satiation. We say in the davening in the morning, Yismach lev mevakshe Hashem. There was a holy Rebbe, there was a Hasidic master, his name was Reb Chanoch Helen of Alexander, and he said that it's interesting, you would think, happy are those that found God. That's what it should say. Yismach lev motzei Hashem. Happy are those who found God. Why does it say, happy are those who are mevakshe Hashem, who are looking for God? Well, first of all, anyone that feels they have found God, run far away from them. I try to run as far away as possible from anyone that says, I have found God. You got a lot of people these days, they're Godding all around, right? You got to run away. I have found what drives me to search for God. That's a person I want to sit with. That's someone I would like to talk to. That's someone I would like to open my heart up to. And in Eretz Yisrael, what we all go through here is this wonderful treatment which is called hachna'ah. Hachna'ah doesn't mean fortifying, doesn't mean giving up. It means I admit that the world is much bigger than me. I admit that I don't know everything. In fact, I barely know anything. But my ratzon, my passion to be close to God, can only really begin when I admit that there's so much more to whatever I thought I knew until now. This is something that's basically rooted in this land, and perhaps that's why Eretz Yisrael is called Eretz Kna'an, because it's machnia. It makes you realize that everything we just said just a few minutes ago, that there's so much more. And usually when we think of like giving up or like admitting that I don't know everything, it seems like a failure. To anyone that's been in the world of Aliyah, that's moved here, and that's in the process of moving here, you'll see how it's one of the greatest things to hold on to at the get-go, at the beginning, to remember this piece of advice, that when you feel like this, that's the beginning stage. That's when you know, okay, I'm on the team of those that are searching for something more meaningful. And like my friends here in Eretz Yisrael always say, it's all about how we keep on making Aliyah. And this is a very important piece to the puzzle that I feel very proud and honored to speak about for a second. As Mark mentioned before, I have the incredible privilege of being part of a wonderful community, mainly an Anglo community of many people that have made Aliyah over the years. And we're in the Zayit neighborhood of Efrat. And without sounding too commercial, because I want to give you a visual, I post on my social media whenever the shul's, the growth of the shul, not just the spiritual growth, but right now, we're building our building right down the block here. And it's so exciting. It could be that on the pebbles, on the rocks, on the stones that we're building literally right now, it could be that Avram and Yitzchak were walking towards the Akedah, mamash, right over here on the stones over here. But we're building a community that hopefully, the building will be beautiful. There's a great mikveh there. There's all these classrooms for children, and it's hopefully user-friendly, and hopefully the davening will be very good, but there's so much more. We are a group of people that understand and are hopefully continuing to understand that Aliyah, for most of us, hopefully for all of us, wasn't an end game. In fact, Aliyah was the beginning. It only starts when you come here. And that's why I personally don't connect so much to people that say, it doesn't matter as long as you just end up here. That's not how we approach life. What I hope that we're able to do, and we've had many discussions with the team at Nefesh B'Nefesh about this, is that our chaver, our community, our project, and anyone that would like to be in touch directly, and so many of you that have reached out to us over the last few months, I see many of you are here with us tonight and continue to ask amazing, amazing questions. We're here to figure out how once we come to Eretz Yisrael, we could keep on making Aliyah. That's really what it's all about. Children pick up on their parents' inspiration, more than any other form of chinuch. If you're inspired about something, that's what your children will receive, much more than anything you try to explain to them or tell them what to do. What happened is that many people once upon a time made Aliyah and it was beautiful. But unfortunately, at a certain point, that was it. It was like, we made Aliyah, and now what? So the inspiration was while they made Aliyah, and that's what the children saw. But you need much more than that. You have to keep on making Aliyah. And once you come to Eretz Yisrael physically, the gates of coming to Yerushalayim Shel Ma'ala begin to open in ways that are impossible to describe unless you're here. And this motto of keeping on making Aliyah is what we're all about. You know, I grew up, like I mentioned before, in Los Angeles, and I grew up in the 80s. I mean, hopefully I'm still growing up, but I grew up as a kid in the 80s. And in the 80s, Los Angeles, I grew up with Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Those were my Rebbes, right? So, you know, Magic, Irving Magic Johnson, I really did not think I would be going here on this Zoominar, but Hashem is big and you gotta be open to whatever he plans before you. Magic won the NCAA championship. That's the college championship of basketball in 1978-79, and he was on Michigan. And everyone thought that that was his stamp because he beat Larry Bird, who was on Indiana in the finals in college. But Magic said that what made him anything was that he realized that only once he reached the pros, that all of that in life that happened before that was all a prep to how hard he's going to work once he comes into the pros. But he was surrounded himself with smart and inspiring people. And that's how he was able to eventually win another 5 championships and making me and many Los Angeles Laker fans very happy and very proud. Lahavdil elef alfe milione havdalos. To just use the parable of inspiration. That's what we're here for. And any level of inspiration that we can be helpful to provide for those that are seeking to keep on making Aliyah once they make Aliyah, and anyone that wants to begin that process of inspiration already now, together with Nefesh B'Nefesh, who obviously will continue to provide all the more tachlis. How do you do this? What should you do? To me, this seems like a wonderful and beautiful chavruta. It's a wonderful, harmonious combination of what many people truly need. I have many conversations with people that know that they could make Aliyah, if it could work for them, but they want so much more than just things working for them. They want that dream, that passion to spread through all parts of their being. It doesn't matter where you end up. There are wonderful, beautiful communities all over this gift called Eretz Yisrael. My parents live in Ra'anana. My cousins live in Ramat Beit Shemesh. We have friends all over the place from Tzfat, Haifa, Modi'in, Ramat Gan, Petach Tikva, Be'er Sheva. It doesn't matter. Here I happen to feel very, I feel a responsibility and I feel very safe saying, we would love to see you join us here, but the tachlis is that once we're all here, the concept of feeling like you're together really takes on a new meaning. Like Mark said before, at a certain point, all of us, we see each other, we're all in each other's lives. And it's such a gift, it's such a wonderful gift that I thank my parents every day of my life for making Aliyah when I was 9 years old as a child. Greatest gift they could have ever given me. So we thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm going to pass it back to Mark. And anything and on any level that we could be of any help on the issues, and not the issues, but the tachlis, the spiritual tachlis that we've shared tonight, don't hesitate to check us out, to find out how to be in touch. And I'm sure, Be'ezrat Hashem, I'm sure that the most gorgeous of times are waiting ahead. And I look forward to being together, dancing towards Yerushalayim Yir HaKodesh. Thank you so much, everyone.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Rav Shlomo. This really amazing energy and idea of this notion of Aliyah is always going up is really something that I think will propel us for the next minutes as we talk about some of the details of it. But it's so important, the idea to keep that spirit, keep that fire going, as it does take time, and there are personal challenges or logistics that need to forward. You really need to have a vision of where you go and the energy to keep your battery. It really, really was great. Also, I just want to also capture the idea we need our hearts and our minds to do this. I think that if everyone intellectually decided to make Aliyah, we'd have a lot more than 4,000 people a year making Aliyah from North America. We need our hearts together to do it. So really, really amazing. And I think we're going to see lots of wonderful things coming out of this type of partnership that really puts a huge emphasis on Idud, on support, on centralizing that type of mission and focus. I want to spend a few minutes just framing some of the practical things that you need to think about, and we're going to try and bring it back together. We're just going to try and not fade away a little bit from the energy and the highness of the spirit and music. But I just want to say that this is really, really important that you have to sort of meld those two notions together. So I want to touch on just some of the wisdom that I have in my almost 11 years helping people make Aliyah from North America. Some of the things that we are going to just briefly touch on today is how to get started, the process, the benefits, the application. We'll touch briefly on the healthcare communities and jobs and building your life. These are those things that you just need to think about if you're going to be able to actualize this desire that you might have to come. I say this often if you've attended one of our other webinars or watched them on the replay, is that there is a really very little ideological difference to our brothers and sisters in North America when it comes to the desire to live in Israel than those of us who already made Aliyah. We were just ready to make a practical step forward. And that's what we want to do, is to help you connect that idea with the practical steps. Just a moment about me, because I'm definitely less famous than Rav Shlomo Katz, is that you can hear from my accents, I'm not really Israeli. I grew up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and went to college and university, got my master's degree at George Washington University. 19 years ago, last week was my Aliyah anniversary. I made Aliyah in 2001 without Nefesh B'Nefesh, but I've almost 11 years working together and knowing the insides and outs of Aliyah, and had, as I mentioned, 11 years assisting thousands of new Olim together with my colleague here, who's listed as Nefesh B'Nefesh, Josh Sussman, 11 years working together to assist North Americans making Aliyah. We'll be taking Q&A in the questions that you might have in the Q&A. We'll do our best to address all of them now, or I'll be sharing my personal email to be able to stay connected as well as with the Shlomo Katz project. I think that really when it comes down to thinking about Aliyah, there are two major things you need to focus on: the technical planning and the processing. The processing is the paperwork. The planning is actually where you're going to live and what are you going to do when you get here. Which one is more important? Well, you can't have one without the other. You know, you need spirit, and we need times. We need to meld them together. So one of the things that you need to think about is what is your timeline, and that's going to help you figure this out. And when you do have a timeline for your Aliyah, it is going to be the thing that's going to assist you to figure out what is going to go to your needs. If you're going to come in the next 8 to 10 months, we encourage you to start the application. But it's important to know who your roots are on a technical level. If you already made Aliyah, if your parents are Israeli, then you'd have to understand how that's going to affect you. If you already made Aliyah and you've lived in Israel, then you have to contact the Bayit Israeli. We're happy to make that connection. But if your parents are Israeli and you were born in Israel and left before the age of 14, okay, or you were born to Israeli parents abroad, you're likely eligible for the benefits of Aliyah, but you also need an Israeli passport, and that's something that you're going to have to get in order to move forward with your potential Aliyah plans. The upside is, if you do have an Israeli passport, you can visit Israel in the time of Corona, and that's what definitely help you come and check things out. The keys to planning your Aliyah, and the first and foremost is very, very practical, is understanding the cost of living and budgeting. My colleague's going to share some great resources in the chat here. One of them is just look at the budgets, whether you are in your 60s and retiring, whether you're single under the age of 30, if you're a family, a couple, you want to just get a sense of the numbers about how you can translate your lifestyle to Israel. We are seeing an over 200% increase in people interested in Make Aliyah, and the number one reason that is that most people have realized that they can continue their careers working from home or online, and they want to bring it to Israel. So you just have to be aware of the taxation that's involved in that, or finding other ways to cover the earning power for the cost of living in Israel. I think that one of the big things that I've discovered about living in Israel for 19 years is that most Israelis are really focused on having enough money, okay, where there's a constant pressure in North America to have a lot of money, okay? And if you can understand what your enough is, that's really going to give you a tremendous perspective about whether you can afford the lifestyle you want to live, however the fancy or modest that is. You just have to figure out that cost of living for yourself. I encourage you to speak to people and connect. You connect as much and ask people direct questions. Definitely speak to an accountant. You want to understand the tax implications of being a Canadian or U.S. citizen while living in Israel, and that will be really, really important. You need to do market research. You need to just start Googling, checking out jobs, checking out communities, networking. Networking is like dating for non-marriage purposes. Start talking to people, and it will be something that's going to help you really figure out about what is going to be best for you, especially if you're looking for a job. Okay, you need to take it slow, take it methodical, speak to people. Nefesh B'Nefesh has an employment department. The email address is right there. Contact them to get names of people, information about companies. Don't just dream about working in Israel. Speak to people about what your eligibility, your chance of getting a job, and what you could do and what you could earn. Take that vision away and actually turn it into something that is really, really practical. Okay. It is important. It's really, really important that you understand also what you need and will pay for in a community. You need to understand that if you want to join certain communities that in certain neighborhoods or on the beach or in the old city, it's very, very expensive, or some places are less expensive. Expensive is a subjective term. You need to understand what you need. Okay, and most Israelis don't really have a shul. They might daven in a kindergarten. They might daven in a school. Okay, they have different options. You have to decide what you need and check it out. You need to look into this. This planning is really, really important to set your expectations on and have a sense of what you need to earn or what's going to be the key ingredients for you to be successful. Ulpan, the government's going to give you a 5-month Ulpan to work on your Hebrew. Start practicing now. It's really, really going to be a beautiful way for you to intensify your relationship with living in Israel. It's really, really amazing. I grew up being illiterate. I went to a Hebrew school growing up where I just knew how to read Hebrew and not understand it. I never thought I would be an almost fluent Hebrew speaker, able to go to the Knesset or listen to the radio. You can do it too. Okay, I am not brilliant at languages. You just need to immerse yourself, and it will be really amazing. The poet laureate Chaim Nachman Bialik of Israel says, reading and translating is like kissing through a veil. You miss the essence of the kiss. And if you really work on your Hebrew, your life can really be transformed, especially just understanding text and the Hebrew and the songs. There's nothing as much as just the tunes, but listening to such beautiful words and music by Rav Shlomo, you'll be able to understand the deeper penetrations of these thoughts and how it will impact your life in Israel. And the healthcare options. We have a tremendously awesome healthcare system in Israel. There are 4 plans. If you're approved for Aliyah, you'll be accepted to them regardless of any pre-existing conditions. And it's really, really important to know what treatment you're going to get and how to make it successful transition with that. These are all the fundamentals, the keys to planning your Aliyah. On a very, very practical level, I think that you can always calculate your Aliyah plans by looking at what your earning power is to the expenses, to the lifestyle, the budget, and it's going to help determine whether you have to save a little bit more or you have to work a little bit harder or take on a side hustle, and it will help you figure out what you're really going to do to make your Aliyah plans as viable, whether it's going to be able to do this year, in 2 years, or in 5 years' time. This is really going to be the practical part that you're going to need to put on your Aliyah planning. With that, the keys to processing your Aliyah, as I mentioned, if you're thinking about coming in the next 8 to 10 months, you should start the application. If you're thinking about coming in a 5 years' time, hold off. There's no reason to worry about it unless you hold like the Rambam, who says that Mashiach's also going to need all your Aliyah documents, so you should gather them as well. Just to be noteful of, I'm going to go over each of them, but I want to walk you through the Aliyah process. You can start the application on Nefesh B'Nefesh's website. It's a joint application with the Jewish Agency for Israel. The hardest step is for people to gather their original documents. I will go over each of those in a moment. Once you have them, the Jewish Agency can interview you. You haven't committed to anything by having an Aliyah interview. It just determines whether you're eligible for citizenship as well as the benefits. Usually after 6 to 8 weeks in non-COVID times, they might notify you that you're approved. COVID might make it quicker. COVID might make it slower. It depends on your documents. And then if you really want to commit, if you do not have an Israeli passport, you need to get an Aliyah visa. If you do already have an Israeli passport because of your parents, you can book your free Aliyah flight and get to Israel. The keys, again, I would tell people is start the process 8 to 10 months before. There's no commitment. Where you were born might affect your timeline, okay, who your parents were. Lishkata Kesser, if you were born in the former Soviet Union, it might take a little longer. So you should definitely start ahead. And if you have Israeli parents, you should make sure you have that Israeli travel document. It doesn't mean you've made Aliyah. You can't vote in elections if you have an Israeli parents and an Israeli passport. You have to actually activate that Israeli citizenship. And it just does take time for you in your processing. The key documents that you'll need is a valid passport, and which is hard to get now in North America because there's so many people who need to renew their passports. You'll need a birth certificate for every person making Aliyah, and you'll also need an apostille on this, which is an international recognized authentication. It is not a notary, it's an apostille, and you need to get it issued in the state where you were born in. The same is true if you are married, widowed, or divorced. A lot of Baruch Hashems or Chas v'Shaloms for that one. Whatever your situation might be, you will also need an apostille on those documents. Again, you may have been born in New Jersey, like I was born in Philadelphia. I'm sorry for the Lakers references before. I'm a Dr. J Sixers fan. If you're born in Philadelphia, then I would need my Philadelphia apostille from there. But I was married. If you were married in another state, you'll need it from the state you were married in. You will also need a letter proving your Jewish lineage or conversion documents. You'll need a letter from a rabbi or community leader, an official letterhead stating your Jewish lineage or the conversion documents. Once you have these documents, you can have your Jewish agency interview. There are other forms you do need to fill out, a waiver, an entry-exit of all the times you visited Israel, even though they have a computer reference of that and they don't stamp your passports, but you need to sign a declaration about how much time you spent in Israel, a health declaration. You will also need a criminal background check, but you will only need this within 6 months before your Aliyah, and that too will need an apostille on it. Again, I'm just going to repeat that because it's a little bit of a new element about a few months ago. North Americans are required to show that they do not have a criminal background check. It actually depends what is on your criminal background check, but you need to have that only within 6 months of your Aliyah. I really want to just walk through the benefits to make Aliyah. My colleague is going to share a great link. These are coupons. Just because the government gives you a coupon doesn't mean you need to use it, but these are frequently asked questions. You're eligible for a free flight to Israel if you're approved for Aliyah. You'll be welcome to the basic Israeli healthcare system, free for your first year. It is not so expensive afterwards. If you're working, it'll be taxed, and you can't negotiate that. If you're retired, it's about 110 shekels a month for a single. Students also pay a similar price about that. It is not a lot of money. You get 5 months of intensive ulpan. There are tax breaks. Specifically on Arnona, or even more interesting for most North Americans is the 10-year tax holiday on passive income earned abroad. I could talk about that if we get a few questions. There's a custom discount on your lift. You will pay to ship your items to Eretz Israel, but the government's going to waive the taxes and allow you to bring all your books, your Passover dishes, your guitars, your computers with you, and you have 3 opportunities within 3 years. There's a purchase tax discount on buying an apartment, which is very, very handsome, and a small mortgage discount, which isn't so wonderful, considering that mortgage interest rates are so low. There's a tax discount on buying a new car, and the government will give you some money, about $4,000 per person, to make Aliyah over your first 5 months to help you get settled, and a small amount of money with your rent subsidy. Those are the basic benefits to making Aliyah. Before we really go into some questions and answers about this, and I would love to answer a question about my Aliyah, Nefesh B'Nefesh's experience with 18 years of people making Aliyah. We have a big forum out here, both on the webinar and on Facebook Live. These are my tips for people who are thinking about exploring Aliyah. Number one, I really highly recommend this awesome Facebook group called Living Financially Smarter in Israel. It is an amazing group where English speakers are talking about financial matters in Israel. I think they're up to almost 26,000 different members. I'm amazed. I'm, again, learning stuff all the time. I don't really search. I rarely post. I really search to learn my wisdom about them. I encourage you to network and be direct. Ask people. If you're afraid of something, ask. You want to discover the downsides here. Everything has ups and downs. There are challenges here. Life has a roller coaster around the world, and we have that here. And we're all experiencing that with COVID and Corona right now. Be direct. Ask people. If you are offered a job, you're wondering what the tax rate in here, Google Hilan tax calculator, and that will give you a great spectrum about how much you're going to bank in your pension or your Roth IRAs, or you will show you after taxes what you're going to get. If you have any healthcare questions, there's a fabulous organization called the Shira Pransky Project. Google them. Read the articles on supplemental coverage, on medicine and what medicines are covered in Israel. It is really, really an amazing resource translating the Hebrew articles to English, as well as advocates in the system if you have a specific healthcare issue. I encourage you to reach out to our employment team to understand what your options might be. Do not wonder. Do not say, oh, I hear things are expensive in Israel. Discover they are. Don't wonder about your job prospects. Your job prospects. Speak to someone, and they will give you the advice about how you can adapt your resume, how you can retrain, and how you can do other things. You need to know your rights and what to negotiate. My first job in Israel, I was a young guy, and they offered me a nice salary at an education institution, and they told me, oh, and you're so wonderful, we're going to pay for your monthly bus pass. I didn't know that's a normal given that the government gives to employees. You need to know what your rights are and what to negotiate. Nefesh B'Nefesh has a plethora of resources and articles on our website. Use them. Speak to our professionals. Our guidance before and after you make Aliyah help you know what you need to negotiate. And the last point on here, before we really flip it over to questions, is that I really want to encourage each of you to find a way to keep your fire burning. There's a spark that anyone who's spent time in Israel, they feel that desire. I spent a year, I used to say it was the best year of my life when I studied at Hebrew University, and now my wife started getting very insulted with that. And now I say it was one of the best years. And that year when we had over 1,000 North Americans, everyone thought about making Aliyah. And life got in the way for many people. If this is your plan, you need to find a way to keep that fire going. I think connecting to the Shlomo Katz project is a fantastic way to do it. Attaching yourself to the Nefesh B'Nefesh groups is really, really great. You want to find a personal way that's going to allow you to keep this focus of your dream of Aliyah possible. And that's why I always like to use this picture here, is of all the thousands of people that used to wake up early in the morning to welcome strangers who are making Aliyah, because Aliyah is part of that journey. As Rav Shlomo said here, Aliyah, the airport is not the destination. We want to continue on this motion. Rak ba'aliyah. We want to continue on the motion of going higher in our dreams. We are continuing to dream. We are continuing to push this notion of what is going to be the Jewish people, what is the greatest project of the Jewish people, which is Medinat Yisrael. This is our third Commonwealth. This is our effort to really fulfill our destiny. If you want to be a part of it, find ways to do it and find ways to keep your fire burning towards your Aliyah. That is, in essence, the wisdom I wanted to share with you. My complimentary, I don't play the guitar, and I can't sing so well, so I'll compliment my resources to the great Rav Shlomo Katz, but I want to take some time to address some questions that might be coming to the Q&A or into the chat. So if we have about 10 more minutes or so that we dedicated off here. So if you have something, I would love to share our wisdom that we're here. Okay, one question came in here. I've been told that by a person that Israel will accept my CA. I presume that might be Canadian Domestic Partnership. By another one that Israel will not. It's interesting. There's a difference in Israel between what the Ministry of Interior will accept. Oh, California's, thank you. Will accept for partnerships versus the Rabbanut. You'll have to show certain documentation whether it's going to meet the Jewish agency, which is representing the government's threshold for what is a type of partnership, what type of domestic partnerships that need to be recognized. It has been my experience often is the case, but I've been around this horn a few times and there's always exceptions. So I'd encourage you to speak to the Jewish agency directly to find out if your partnership of your situation is going to become. We had a question last week I've never been asked is what do you do about annulled marriages, or we are married halakhically, but we are not married in the eyes of the state of California. So you have to be able to understand how this is going to be practical to your needs. Okay. Let's see what other questions we might be getting. A new one came in. Fantastic. A person's writing in here, I am a gorer zchuyot. My husband is not Jewish. We want to return to Israel in the coming months. I called the consulate to obtain a permit for him. So this is an interesting question. This is something that unfortunately I can't help with. Because of COVID, the government has said only people who have Israeli passports will be allowed to enter. You need to speak to the Israeli consulate. We do not have influence over that. You have to know that 80% of all COVID cases came by airplane. So they have a strict policy about this. Only people who have show of residency in Israel or they have an Israeli passport, you should reach out to the Israeli consulate to try and speak to them. But you really have to be able to show that you are making Aliyah or that you are already a resident in Israel. So you'd have to be able to do that. We are hoping that this policy is going to change soon. There are signs that it is changing in the sense that all of the yeshiva and seminary students are allowed to enter the country. And they're actually announcing certain countries can fly to Israel, and Bezrat Hashem, more people will be able to fly to Israel to visit. And but you should know that Aliyah has continued. It is really, really amazing to see we have more people making Aliyah this week. A question came in: what's the time frame for getting a visa after you receive approval? 7 to 10 business days. It takes 7 to 10 business days to get your Aliyah visa. It actually only takes 2 or 3 days. Depends about how many people are applying for the visa at the same time and the other work that the consulate is doing. But 7 to 10 business days is the official answer. A question came: is how does someone start a new life in Israel? You need to think about what your circumstances are and what do you need. How much look at the budget, what we think that someone your life cycle is going to live, and how you're going to earn it, and then choose a community that's affordable and build your career. You really want to be able to look into what you're going to build your life. I'll say this, Cheli, who wrote this question in here, if you were going to move from California to New York or New York to Texas, you would go through the same process. You would look at the same factors. You look at what's the Jewish community like? What do I do for jobs? How far am I away from his family? But you're moving to Eretz Israel, you're moving to Israel, and there's a not-for-profit organization that's here to help you. There's another not-for-profit organization called the Shlomo Katz Project, which is reaching out their arm out to help you. It's really, really important that you understand about how to do it. Okay? I guess this is a personal question. How are religious Israelis davening for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur this year? Well, I'm going to be hopefully davening from my porch. We have a courtyard out here. 10 people might be in different minyanim. Some people will be davening at home. We'll be just like some of you around the world. Our hearts will be united, even though we can't physically be together. And we should really merit to be a greater sense of unity, even though we are not uniform. And I think that's one of the things that we're all learning from COVID, if that is my suggestion. As an Oleh, I'm curious what the options will be in COVID times. I'm not sure what that question is. People are making Aliyah. They just have to wait 2 weeks in isolation before they move out. But they're doing all the same functions. Again, more people are doing that than ever before. It's really very, very exciting. A question came in. I'm curious what options about how to get my apostille. You need to Google the state that you were born in or married in, and they will tell you how to get your apostille. There are certain companies that you can hire to be able to help you with that. That you have a clear answer on there, or you can contact us and we'll guide you to. Here's a question that someone says that they spoke to Nefesh B'Nefesh and they had last were in Israel in 1998, and that we currently encourage them to make another visit, but they can't. Israel has changed a lot since 1998. I'll just say one word: Wi-Fi. Okay, it has changed. Just getting the buses is so much easier. It's so much of a pleasure now that you have these apps to tell you what stops to get off of. First of all, plan your visit as if there's no COVID, and you will get the answers that will open up your heart and open up your possibilities. You'll talk to people about communities. You'll speak to people about jobs. It is amazing how we can really connect to the hearts and minds of people, even though we can't physically be there. It's not the same. I agree with you. There's something about really those smells of Machne Yehuda. I don't want to rub it in, but I was, going there tomorrow. There's the sounds of the screaming. It's not the same, but you can get pretty close digitally. Plan out your visit. Address your concerns. You want to discover your challenges before you get here, so you have a plan to overcome them. Thank you very much for the question, Rick. A question here that says that they're worried about their past associations, their past backgrounds. You need to investigate that if you have a criminal background, any associations. It's good to speak to the Jewish agency to see if they would troubleshoot if you have any difficulty getting inside the country. because of your past associations with maybe radical parties in Israel. Are there communities that you can think of that modern Orthodox where married women do not cover their hair? Yes, we have lots of variety in this country. We have lots of different shapes and sizes of people who are. You don't want to never judge a Jew by their exterior, and we have people who would shock you with their observances, and you just have to see how niche your neighborhood wants to be. You just have to look into it. Also, I just want to say this about, I live in Jerusalem, okay? I don't live in Jerusalem. I live in Katamonim. The neighborhoods have personalities. Within the neighborhoods have personality. And that's true for Modi'in. It's true for Renana. It's true for Efrat. It's true for Carmel, Haifa. All these cities, the neighborhoods have different personalities and variety. You need to explore that if you really want to get a sense of what the religious and social personalities are there. A question came in. This is an easy one. Can you get an Israeli passport before you make your move? If you do not have an Israeli parent, you cannot get an Israeli passport until you make Aliyah. I'm sorry to say. What's the best way to adjust teenagers who are established in America? What general statistics on how teenagers do when they make Aliyah? So not many teenagers make Aliyah each year from North America. It is a very, very low percentage of people come. Dr. Phil, famous on TV, is famous for saying, you're only as happy as your most unhappy child. That's also true for Aliyah. Some teenagers do really, really well. It's about their expectations. You have to understand what their plan was going to be. And I really encourage you to have a conversation about what they feel about doing the army or national service, college in Israel. If they are partners in this, you will do really, really well. If they express their concerns, they are giving a gift to you because they are verbalizing their worries, and you can have a conversation and get resources to do it. But if you have teenagers, you have to realize what each of their challenges are going to bring. But I encourage you, there's a whole different Torah of raising your kids to make Aliyah and making the expectation that you're going to be here and that you expect them to also fulfill that dream or continue on the path of educating themselves in Israel. Fantastic. Does all the family have to travel to the Jewish Agency office and interview done by Zoom meeting? It's hard to say Zoom or not meeting. Children over a certain age will have to come to your interview. You have to see what they're going to say after things return to normal soon. If your visa expired after 6 months, you definitely will have to renew that. Again, it's a very, very specific question. Here's an interesting one. Are absorption centers still an option? My wife's family moved to 1987. I see that my brother-in-law is on the call here. He was a baby at the time. Yes, Americans used to move to absorption centers. Most North Americans are not moving to absorption centers anymore. Very, very few are. They are choosing to rent apartments right away. You can speak to the Jewish Agency to see if this is a viable option for you, but you have to be aware. You have to be aware of the limitations you have for working or the social components to it. So it is technically, the answer is yes, but most people are bypassing that as an option. A question came in, can I suggest modern Orthodox singles in their 40s? Jerusalem, Tel Aviv are the two hotspots for most singles, but you do have wonderful suburbs that do have communities as well. And just because you might want to live in a place like Efrat and join the Shlomo Katz community there and Shirat David, it's really wonderful. And you're a 20-minute drive or a 30-minute bus ride from participating in anything in Jerusalem. You just have to think about what you want to anchor your community in or your social life. But there are thriving 30s, 40s communities around this country. Specifically for Anglos, it is in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Questions are coming in live, fast and furious. Time is winding down. How do I set up a pilot trip? Well, you just have to start writing down your questions and researching them. Email me. We'll help you. 4,000 North Americans are making Aliyah each year. They're happy to share their wisdom about what you should do. But you need to map it out. Where are you going to live? What schools? What are you going to do on a normal Tuesday afternoon? You just want to think about each of these issues. Furnishings. What are you going to bring? What are you not going to bring? And that will help you figure out where your deer is going to be and what you're going to do when you head here. Fantastic. Talk more about absorption centers. Usually sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year for absorption centers. But again, most North Americans I know, singles are doing some certain options. If you're post college, many people do Opan Etzion. That is an absorption center option, but it is not really is something that many people are doing from my experience. Is a Efrat and Gush Etzyon a relatively reasonably priced? You asked a great question, Rick. Reasonably priced is a subjective question. You have to look online. My favorite website for looking about real estate prices is Madlan. There are great websites which will show you comparative prices to other parts in Israel. Some neighborhoods in Efrat are more expensive than others. You need just to look at the prices because that is a subjective question for you. I'm a 33-year-old female. Is it too late to serve in the IDF? Unless you're a doctor, the answer is yes. If you're over the age of 22 and you're not a doctor, the Army does not want you. There's a wonderful program called Sarel, which you can volunteer and volunteer for a week or 2 weeks. It's a great program. But if you're over the age of 22 and you're not a doctor, the Army does not want you. Are there wheelchair accessible homes in Efrat? Some of those homes in Efrat are wheelchair accessible, but not all of them. You have to look into that. I've heard people have been turned down because of mental health problems. They won't necessarily be turned down. They are required to show a doctor's letter. You could be rejected for Aliyah if you cannot prove your Jewish lineage, you have a criminal background, or you might be a danger to yourself or the state of Israel. You need to show that you have the mental health to make the trip to Israel and to cognitively understand what you are undergoing. Are there storage units? We can bring our stuff and buy home later. Yes. Yes, you can store stuff in Israel. Obviously, you'll pay for it. Are there special discounts for Olim to buy an apartment? There is a purchase tax discount on it. You can Google that. We have information on our website. We answered that live. We're down to the end of the question. See here if there any popped into the chat here. Josh has been doing a good job of answering the chat questions. It's really, really wonderful. Green Sapar is a facility older than 22-year-olds. Yes, up to Green Sapar, that you can volunteer up to 25, to Raphael, to be technical about it. But you do not have an Army obligation over the age of 22. Over 26, for sure, they're not going to take you. But you have to be really, really careful about whether you want to do it. What if my 6-year-old son absolutely does not want to go to the Army? What should you recommend? I recommend either not coming on Aliyah, maybe one of your spouses making Aliyah and the other not making Aliyah, and having your son study in Israel as a non-citizen. Right now, he couldn't get in because of COVID, but with something we call split Aliyah would be a great option for a 16-year-old to see whether he or a son, whether he would want to take on this. I would put the brakes and really do some research on that. That is a really, really great question from Anonymous. Are there volunteer opportunities for English speakers? There are tremendous amounts of volunteer opportunities for English speakers around this country and great ways to work on your Hebrew. Wow, wow, wow. That was a flurry of, we have over 60 different questions asked here. Really, really amazing stuff. I am wonder if my voice is still working, but I will trust that it is. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. Great, great, great. Well, I think that I am getting the signal that we are almost, we are at the end here. And I wanted just to really thank very, very much to this initiative really came from the Rav Shlomo Katz project and Shimon, who reached out to us. It really was an idea of saying that we wanted to really, I think I'm picturing right now Yaakov Avinu's ladder, his dream of a ladder that was really up high in the sky as far as the Shemayim, okay? But it was Mutzav Arts, it was really in the ground. It really was grounded in, and we have great malachim that are going up and down, and those malachim, as the Sfat Emet says, were the angels of Eretz Yisrael, escorting, Rashi says, up inside of Israel and outside of Israel, and the Sfat Emet actually says that it's actually showing the higher levels that we go on. There's something here that I think each of us can take a rung that will bring us closer to this dream, but you have to have your feet really on the ground and that dream. Keep both together. Keep both those feelings, and know that we are here for you. Both the Rav Shlomo Katz project and Nefesh B'Nefesh. Please be in touch. We've heard most of the questions. Please reach out and ask us. We'd love for you to be able to assist you on the stream this year, next year, or to come, and really be able to have a sincerity in your heart. You say Lashon Haba B'Yushalayim this year. Wish everyone a Shavua Tov and a wonderful Chodesh Tov soon. On behalf of everyone, thank you very much, and we really wish you well.